Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. It's early October, but I'm going to do a video now to show you about preparing the hives for winter. It is a few weeks early for me to be doing this in this area, but a few of the things were right on schedule. So what I want to show you first of all is preparing this double deep hive for winter. The number one thing for preparing a hive for winter is that they're going into the winter healthy, and that means no mites. So these hives were treated just about 4 weeks ago with Formic Pro. So they have been freed of mites, have tested to see that mite levels are nice and low. I will be going back into the hives again in another few weeks with oxalic acid, and of all the things that you can do in terms of preparing your hive for winter, making sure they're relatively free of mites is the most important thing. Everything else that we do today is icing on the cake. Normally the bees will make it through the winter just like this, but there's a few things that we can do to really give them an edge when to help them avoid other stress factors. The most important thing, of course, next to mite treatment is that they have enough food. This is working on the assumption that you've got a queen right hive in the first place. But in terms of making sure they have enough food, you can either use a scale or you can use your muscles. And the way I check to see if my hives are ready for winter is I will take a convenient point on the hive to try and lift it, and I'll take it and I'll tip it back. This hive weighs well over 100 pounds. I can tell just by the feel of it, it's a really heavy to tip back. That means that by default, pretty much this entire deep box is absolutely full, wall to wall with honey. Generally speaking, it means that this bottom box is at least half full. So our food is ready for the winter and our mite levels are ready for the winter. Now, the first thing that I would do this time of year with all of these hives is reducing the entrance. So I will normally put on a mouse guard. Now, if you are using oxalic acid vaporization, sometimes the mouse guard is going to be in the way, and if you're putting it on now, you may have to take it off if you're going to do some oxalic acid treatment later. But I'm going to use a different type of applicator for oxalic acid, so the mouse guard is not going to be in the way for me. So what I am going to do is put a 1/2 inch wire mesh on top at the entrance. This will stop mice getting into this part of the entrance. I'll take a piece of wood. I've got a piece of nail in here in the way from last time, so I'll take that out. Take this piece of wood to reduce the entrance and hold that wire mesh in place. So that's one. And I'll take another piece of wood. So now the entrance is reduced down to roughly 1.5 inches. Anything between 1 inch and 2 inches is about right in my view. It varies a little bit, and it's not that critical. The wire mesh will stop mice getting into the bottom of the hive, and by having this entrance reduced, it'll reduce the drafts in there, and it's also going to help really prevent robbing through this last part of the year. We haven't had a frost yet, but as soon as we have a frost, that's usually the signal when robbing really gets going. Robbing started in these yards weeks before that because there's not been any honey flow of significance. Okay, so mouse guard is on. Then while we're down here, I'm going to put a screw in the bottom. I usually use 4-inch screws, and that is going to be to hold my insulation in place down here. So I usually put it about 1/2 inch or so above the entrance, and just enough basically to stop the bee cozy closing down the entrance here, folding down over the entrance here. Now at the top of the hive, right now I've got a foil inner cover here, and if I had a wooden inner cover, I would be taking this off now at this time. So I'm going to do that here for demonstration purposes. This super is absolutely full of honey. There's a good cluster of bees predominantly down here, but there's bees throughout the hive because it's a very nice warm day today. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to put a feeding rim on the hive. This feeding rim will provide me with a space to put food in the hive should it be running low at any time. But this hive is not going to run low of food. I know that there's enough food in here that it's going to carry through the winter fine. What I will usually do above the feeding rim is I'll put a sheet of Homosote. This will absorb moisture. So I usually put moisture board above this. Some people will use supers full of straw or sawdust or something like that. This does the same thing, only it's very convenient to take off and store, to dry out and use it again next year. This has been used multiple years and it works very, very well. Then I'm going to put an insulation board on the top to stop the heat being lost from the top of the hive. Now, what I'm going to do now is put the Bee Cosy on. I don't have a knife with me, so let's use that. Now the Bee Cosy is R8 insulation sleeve, and there's a seam on the Bee Cosy here with a thin spot on the insulation. That usually goes directly above the entrance here, so it's sort of connecting a passageway between the lower entrance and the upper entrance. So I'll put this Cosy on. Just a big hollow there. Entrance in the front. This is where having another pair of hands with you is really helpful, but just to show it can be done easily by one person, Amy will still be holding the camera while I slip this on. Pull it down the back, pull it down in the front, pull it down on the back again. And that screw there is to stop the bees getting the entrance being blocked up here. Meanwhile, back over here, everything is ready for the telescopic cover to go over. But just before I do, to avoid anything being in the way, I'm going to take another screw and I'm going to put it just below the entrance of the feeding rim. Ugh, missed. Can't do it left-handed. There we go. And that's going to stop the Cosy going up and covering this entrance here. And now we just need the telescopic cover on. And one final thing, need a good sized rock on the top to stop the cover blowing off, because you have to remember the bees are not able to glue anything down beyond that sheet of Homosote. They can glue the Homosote down to the rim, but they won't glue the insulation down because that's above the Homosote, and they won't be able to glue this down. So a heavy weight on the top is important. So now this colony is ready for winter. There's R8 insulation on the sides. If I use two sheets of foam board, I'd have R9 insulation on the top as well. But this is ready for the winter. The bees are going to be a little disoriented by the fact that the entrance is reduced and it's now a different color colony. But it's fine putting the insulation on at this time. You can, I will normally put the insulation on end of October, beginning of November. The best thing is just make sure you do it before you've got 2 feet of snow around the place. And so otherwise, typically I don't do this until late October, early November. As I say, we're doing it now for demonstration purposes. So let's do it one more time on another hive, just to repeat it. Okay, we're ready? Still rolling? Okay, so here we have another 2-story deep. And again, trying to check the weight of the hive. And this is really heavy. This is even heavier. There's a good 130 pounds of honey in here. There is no way this hive is going to run out of food. So, we're ready to start the process. So again, we'll put an entrance reducer on with the mouse guard. So just simply a couple of bits of wood. And the reason I use this setup is because it's just uniform. I use the same thing whether I'm using an entrance reducer with an entrance feeder or not, because I find it much easier just to do this. Most of the summer these entrance reducers are off altogether. So no mice will be able to get in there. I will put our 4-inch screw in here to hold up the bee cozy. Again, doing it with my left hand. That's okay. So that'll hold the bee cozy in place there. We're off. You see that honey, and I know by the weight of it the honey goes right down to the bottom here as well. So put my feeding rim on. Not that we're going to need a feeding rim. Homer soap board. And insulation. And just to make life easier, it's usually convenient just to put a rock on it this time, because it makes it easier to put the cozy on. So just at this point I'm going to do that. Take the bee cozy, take the seam here, make sure I've got it oriented properly. So, seam on the front, take the rock off for now. We're ready just to put our telescopic cover on after we've put one more screw in. Hold the cozy down. Telescopic cover on, and our rock, and that's another hive ready for the winter. So I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please press that subscribe button. If you have any questions, leave them with me on the comments section. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.